Had a traveling thing not too long ago where the group, literally a couple of them had diseases that were like spreading. So we had to stop and do some checks for that. One of them literally had an arm amputated because he had a disease spreading up his arm, and that was a whole thing. So we're still dealing with that. There might be hunting or gathering if needed, right? Finding, foraging for water, food, NPC training. This is a thing that comes up in my games a lot of times. Sometimes there will be religious type stuff like praying, things like that. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. This is GM Philosophy and I'm the GM Philosopher. And today we're talking about making D&D travel actually matter. How to do it without making it a chore. Today we're talking about something that almost every GM struggles with at some point. Travel is its own monster, okay? That weird in-between space where sessions can either turn into a slog or a lot of GMs will hit the fast forward button, okay? Now, this video was actually inspired by an awesome question from TurtleDuck222 in my free Discord community. You should check out the GM Philosophy Discord. Links in the description. We have almost 600 Game Masters in there. We're having an awesome time, guys, forwarding the state of the game, turning TTRPGs into something for the future, just being awesome, people running awesome games and sharing awesome information. So make sure you join us. Now, not only was that a great question that got me thinking, I should update this. I've been doing some new stuff with travel I want to share, but also a bunch of other people posted great responses. Garrick, Ronze, Baron, many others in the Discord. And I've, put together this video, like the list of topics in this video based on that interaction. So first off, I want to thank everyone who shared their advice in this thread. This is very much a community-powered episode, guys. So the question was basically this. I've been DMing about 6 months. I've tried random tables, prepped encounters, rolling on the fly, skipping travel entirely, but travel still feels flat or exhausting. How do you run travel so it feels meaningful? Now, keep in mind, I'm paraphrasing, summarizing, rewording some things, right? So if one of you were the ones who contributed to this, if I don't exactly quote you, please don't be upset. I had to rework a little bit of this to make it fit into a functional video. So we're trying to deal with it a bit more broadly, but that's basically the essence of what the question was. And this is such a real question, guys, because travel should feel like part of the story. But for a lot of tables, it feels like paperwork or it feels like time wasted. And we don't have time for that, guys. We're out here playing awesome TTRPGs, playing D&D every week. You don't want to sink hours into traveling that could be spent having the game story continue feeling awesome, or if it could just be skipped, then that's another question too. So I believe it was Garrick who actually asked a really good question in response to TurtleDuck's question. Why are you even traveling, right? What's the core idea, right? So before we talk about mechanics, before we talk about tables, before we talk about dice, ask this: what purpose does travel serve in your game? If travel is only there to burn rations and time, then why do it? This is a good question. If it has no narrative function, no emotional weight, no choices, no risk, no discovery, why not skip it? Which is a really good question. Now, TurtleDuck did say something about the initial query that was really important. They wanted travel because it felt like chunks of the story and bonding were missing. They didn't want to teleport between quest markers. They wanted the journey to matter. And that was kind of the key to this post. And that's something that we should all think about. Do we want journeying to matter? Personally, I think traveling should always matter a little bit. I never like to just hit bam, fast travel that 30-day journey. I think that's too much because the journey should matter, I think, personally. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Let's keep that conversation alive in the chat. Do you think journeying should matter? Should it count? Or should it be something we skip over? I think this is a valid question, okay? But if we're going to go through travel, if we're going to role play it, if we're going to make it part of the story, then it should be doing at least one of these things. It should be building party relationships, creating tension or danger, showing off your world, presenting some choices, reinforcing scale. That's actually an interesting one. Adding consequences, or at least offering discovery, okay? If it's doing none of that, it might actually be worth it to just hit the fast forward button. Now, first I want to go into my simple travel method. This is the method I use for traveling. This is what I've been doing lately. I have done traveling differently. I've used different resources. I've got a lot of random tables I will use and stuff like that. But here's the basic essence of my current travel method. I keep it pretty light. One player generally gets designated as the navigator, right? The one making the survival checks for the group. Like, I'll say which one of you is going to lead this group, be like the guide, so to speak. And if they trust it to an NPC, well, risky business. But if one of the player characters does it, okay, and I have them roll a simple D100. If they roll like above a 90, then there might be something happen that's like positive or, non-dangerous. If they roll below a 10, then there might be some kind of dangerous or conflict-oriented thing. Okay. So in other words, there's like a 20% chance something's going to happen. Otherwise, there's really no encounter. That's it. If there's no encounter, I do quick maintenance checks. I'll check for conditions or disease if relevant. Had a traveling thing not too long ago where the group, literally a couple of them had diseases that were like spreading. So we had to stop and do some checks for that. One of them literally had an arm amputated because he had a disease spreading up his arm, and that was a whole thing. So we're still dealing with that. There might be hunting or gathering if needed, right? Finding, foraging for water, food, NPC training. This is a thing that comes up in my games a lot of times. Sometimes there'll be religious type stuff like praying, things like that. Then I narrate the day in about 5 sentences. I'll talk about the weather, the terrain, the mood, like kind of the what the mood of the countryside is like and the journey, how it's feeling. And maybe I'll provide one interesting detail. Like you did spot today, like a group of bears, but they kind of went about their way, something like that. Like I'll just point out maybe something interesting and then we'll move on. The next day we'll roll again. Sometimes the party. So here's another thing is if the party does roll an encounter, then there's also a good chance that they're going to spot what's coming up if they're keeping a good watch. So it's like, well, roll me a perception check. Maybe it's like you see a group of riders, about a mile up ahead. They seem to be making camp, from the looks of it, they're well armed. You don't know what's going on. What do you want to do? So basically giving them the choice. Sometimes they'll be like, no, let's go around them. It's like that might add another day to your travel. Is that okay? They might be like, yeah, so we'll just, or they might be like, well, let's go on up and say hi to them. Let's go greet them and see what's going on. So they kind of get a choice in that. I don't force them usually unless they get ambushed or something to have that encounter. And I think this goes to one thing that I believe in very much. Choice matters more than randomness. So even avoiding an encounter should cost something, right? Time, supplies, exhaustion, but at least they get a choice in it. And that gives them agency for telling the story of the characters. And suddenly the travel now has stakes. There's choices to be made, right? Choices that will actually affect them. Okay. Now, let's talk about unique sightings, constant combat, right? Garrick in the Discord shared some really good feedback and tips and tricks. Garrick has been running games for years, and he shared a few brilliant bits here. Not every encounter should be combat. Some should just be weird. A towering chalk pillar in the distance, 4 trained dogs doing roadside tricks for food, a ruined building on a hill, stuff that makes players go, wait, what? These moments build world texture. They make the map feel alive. Combat is seasoning, not the meal, right? Not every encounter has to be, you're attacked by a monster, roll for initiative. There's a lot that can go on, right? Encounters can mean way more than just combat. Now, another one of the GMs in the chat also said this, think of travel as a macro dungeon. And I believe it was Redacted who said this. I'm not 100% sure. My notes, I've been making notes, but anyway, I think it was Redacted who said this. Treat wilderness like a dungeon, not an underground dungeon, but like a conceptual dungeon with multiple paths, points of interest. There can be dead ends. There could be risks down certain pathways. There could be landmarks if they go a certain way, right? So there are choices, and then those choices will lead to different things. And you can plot those out. It can be kind of a simple flow chart, but at least that gives travel some texture, okay? It shows you that the forest isn't empty space. It's room A connected to room B, connected to mountain pass C. That's where point crawls come in, okay? Instead of hex by hex grinding, you map important locations and draw connections between them. Each path has time cost, difficulty, danger, and then the players choose routes based on the information provided by the checks, their survival check, their nature check, whatever. Suddenly travel becomes kind of a strategic thing. It's not about bookkeeping. It's not all about fighting. Hex crawls and point crawls are just 2 flavors of the same idea. This is structure paired with freedom, but in that box, you give players a lot of agency to tell the story of the journey, that's what we're here doing, guys. We're telling the story of the player characters. We're letting them have agency over their story, and we're empowering them to do that in the world we've created, okay? Now, landmarks create agency. This is another important thing. One of the most powerful tools that I love to use and I see used in traveling is this, visible landmarks. So you might say off to the west on a small hill, you see what might be a ruined building. Boom, now players choose, right? Should they go over there and check it out? But it's going to cost them another couple days. or there could be danger, whatever. Whether it be snow blasted mountain passes or the unknown dwarven tunnels underground. We all know from watching Lord of the Rings, going underground is dangerous, right? There could be a Balrog or worse hiding in the deep dwarven mines. But this is how you avoid railroading travel. You give them forks in the real road with real choices, and then you let them roll and you give them the data they would have and you let them make the choices. This turns traveling into a fun strategic thing, even without necessarily having encounters. The travel itself is sort of like a whole puzzle. Okay, and here's another important thing, and Ronze Baron said this. I love Ronze. Was one of the original party members in my first playthrough of the Haunting at Ashborough. Super, super awesome player and DM. He said this. It's very important to not have gotchas in travel, and I think this is true. Try not to run zero warning encounters, or if you do, make it very rare. You should always give hints. You should foreshadow danger. There could be tracks. There could be weather shifts. There could be strange silences. One thing I'll do is I'll have players notice, like even before some kind of ambush, I'll have them notice, you noticed something. And usually it'll be the druid who does this, or the barbarian. You notice that the birds are silent and the bugs are silent. The woods are eerily quiet. Something is wrong, right? So I'll, give them at least the feel-good moment of like, oh, I sensed something was coming on, right? Or they might hear roars in the distance, right? Players should feel like they walked into danger, right? They should feel like, oh, I was at least smart enough to see this coming. Not that they just fell helplessly through a trap door and were given no choice, no warning whatsoever, right? This kind of helps to preserve trust and gives players that sense of like their characters have power in this world, which they should feel like. Now, here's a philosophy moment. I want to kind of back out on this. I want to approach this a bit more philosophically for just a moment. Here's a deeper truth about travel that I think encompasses really everything I'm trying to say in this video. Travel isn't about distance. It's actually more about transformation and storytelling. And that's what it should be. If it's even going to be in the campaign, it should accomplish this. The party should arrive changed. Maybe they're wounded. Maybe they're stronger. Maybe they're closer. Maybe they're more cautious now, right? They got beat up a little bit. Maybe they're more bonded together. Maybe they're more afraid because they've seen the danger of the world. Maybe they're more hopeful because they've overcome great danger on the journey, right? But something should transform. If nothing changes between point A and point B, then you didn't run travel. You just ran a loading screen. And what is the worst thing we could do in our TTRPGs is turn them into a video game. We're not playing a video game. We're telling a narrative, a creative story. We're creating ephemeral art together. Okay, so make sure there's transformation in the travel. Make sure that something changes, something transforms. There's redeeming value to the story of the player characters that happened during the journey. Even if it's a little thing, even if just, every player has a little realization about themselves, or every character, like they managed to successfully do something that may give them a feel-good moment, whatever it is, right? Now, here's a quick summary. I'm going to, kind of wrap this up a little bit. And I want you to drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about this so far. What are we missing with travel? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? What are your go-tos as a DM? Drop those comments. I really want to hear them. And if you enjoy the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, because friends, we're trying to grow here and every little bit of interaction helps so much. So thank you so much for that. Now, here's a quick summary. You want to decide why travel exists, first of all. You want to use light encounter rolls, not constant chaos. You want to mix combat, social, and strange sightings. Don't just always go to monsters attack you, right? You want to treat wilderness like a dungeon. Use hex point crawls or hex crawls for structure. Add landmarks for player choice. Give them a choice. Do they want to go explore that landmark, or do they want to stick to the trail, right? There may be treasure over there, but there could also be bugbears. Who knows? Always foreshadow danger. Give your players the agency that they deserve to see when danger might be coming. Even if it's relatively unavoidable at this point, at least giving them the chance to see it is good. And then let travel change the party. Make sure that it transforms them to some degree, okay? That's it. You don't need massive tables, though there are a lot of great random roll tables that I use for this. You don't need complex systems. Honestly, you really don't. What you do need is intention. Now, once again, I'd love to hear how you handle travel at your table. Drop a comment, share your methods. Let's steal each other's best ideas, okay? Which is basically what I did for this video from the awesome people in Discord. A big thanks to Turtle Duck, Garrick, Ronze Baron, and everyone else who contributed to this conversation. If you want to go deeper into emotional resonance, player investment, and building journeys that actually matter, you can check out my ebook, The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery. That is available still for a limited time, low introductory price. That's basically my most important book to date that I've written on my tactics, philosophies, insights on how to run emotionally resonant games that actually stir player emotions and get them to be pumped and want to come back every week to continue. So if that's of interest to you, make sure you check that out and grab it. Link is in the description. And as always, friends, the goal here at GM Philosophy is to empower game masters to run better games. Roll some D100s for me at your next game, you awesome people. And I will see you on the next one.